All right, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. My name is Tucker Garrigan. I'm a Director of Business Development at OneDataSource, joined by Andy Lester, founder and CEO of Tablespoon. One note, I'm filling in for our president and founder, Bruce Belvin, but I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. I remember clearly when I met Andy and his team at Tron Finance and Development Conference several years back. It was one of those conversations that I had where I immediately sort of recognized in Andy and his team a common approach, common mindset that I felt strongly about would fit well with our group at OneDataSource. I went up and introduced myself on purpose because I was in full recognition of the value of Intacct and the tech behind it. But as I think we'll see as a theme of our presentation today, that it's about the people behind the tech in so many ways. It's really the driver of success for us and for our customers. And what we're going to be talking about for everyone today is just how we empower restaurant franchisees with the back office technology and the partnerships that make that work. Couple notes we got here up on the screen. We're gonna talk about the tools of digital transformation. We're going to talk a lot about a suite, an all-in-one suite. You hear the term ERP a lot, and end-to-end ERP versus best-in-class providers that integrate for solutions. We're going to talk about the value of integrated back office technologies and what makes great partnerships in this space. And then we'll save some time at the end to address questions, live Q&A, either from you all on the webinar directly or through the chat. Andy, anything you want to add to that before we move through?
Let's dive in.
All right. A little bit about us. We've been in this space since the early 2000s. Originally, the original intent and work we did was really with an operations focus, trying to create really meaningful business intelligence by tying together all the disparate systems that are part of the ecosystem in multi-brand QSR. It grown and evolved quite a bit over the last 20 years, now supporting over 14,000 units and 50 brands and more systems than brands that we integrate with by a long shot. And our customer revenues have surpassed the 10 billion mark. So there's a lot of experience, a lot of lessons learned through success and through failure and through meaningful partnerships, which we'll talk a lot about today. Next slide, Michael.
Great. Well, my name is Andy Lester. I'm the founder and CEO of Tablespoon. Really excited to be here with everyone here this afternoon. I am a CPA by background. I started the firm about 15 years ago with a real focus and a passion for technology and really the way that technology can help improve the lives of accountants and finance professionals and ultimately help support stronger operations for our clients. Next slide. And just a brief introduction to Tablespoon. We are a Sage business partner. We exclusively serve the restaurant industry. We work across the full spectrum of the industry, a lot of franchisees, many different brands. We also work with independent groups, really of all shapes and sizes. But really our specialty and our focus is leveraging our very deep experience and expertise in the restaurant industry to help our clients grow and succeed. And we do that through managed accounting services, as well as implementing, deploying Sage Intacct, leveraging partnerships with OneDataSource and others, and a variety of consulting services as well. So to kind of tee up our conversation today, I want to take just a minute to start, almost at the very beginning and talk about, what it means to move your tech stack into the cloud. Right. So we see this a lot in talking with groups that are, trying to start on this journey of digital transformation. And there's always this question of, where do we start? How do we start? And one of the most important concepts to really understand is the benefit of moving your tech stack into the cloud. Right. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, a simple analogy is to say, moving to the cloud is like plugging into the wall socket for electricity, right, to get power, versus having to create the generator, create the power distribution lines, all of the infrastructure that goes into creating power, which is, how you would have to that would be the analogy for an on-premise type of situation. So the cloud opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity and possibility. And really, it's because by moving your tech stack into the cloud, there's this massive computing power and capability that becomes available, much more scalable, the ability to plug into other systems and really drive, the future of your company. It's really, the cloud is absolutely foundational. A lot of what we're talking about today is sort of, on the presumption that you are either already in the cloud with your back office, or are looking to make that move. Next slide. All right. So once you're in the cloud, then we want to talk just a little bit about how you then start to think about building that tech stack and that integrated tech stack. And when we're talking about back office systems and software, even going back to the days before the cloud, there's always been an option or a model or an approach that basically says, we're going to use a suite. We're going to have a single system, that it, allows us to operate our restaurants, as well as to handle all the back office tasks, accounting, financial reporting, bills, payroll, all of that in one seamless suite software solution. And those options still exist today, but in moving to the cloud, there's a different opportunity to think about your tech stack, which involves what we refer to as best in class or best in breed products, which is simply being able to customize and tailor the tech stack according to what is best for your concept, according to what systems you don't have control over as a franchisee. And we'll be talking more about some of those benefits. Tucker, from your perspective, with the different systems that you work in, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, thanks for the opportunity here. I have some very strong opinions about this, and I'll give some context and background. In preparing for this, I was talking with you, Andy. It's 15 plus years of almost continuously having some type of software implementation project going on in my life. In previous iterations, it was, and focused in around healthcare IT and a lot of accounting practices and a lot of accounting tech stacks. And the last 10 years has been focused exclusively on the restaurant industry and supporting accounting and home office functions and operations here as well. My experience teaches me that having a best-in-class solution, a lineup of partners in this, lends tremendous value to it. When we talk about the domain expertise needed to communicate with operators, and then communicate with the other stakeholders and the different departments in and around the industry, I just think the clients are best served by finding the right partners to create a best-in-class solution. That's not to say that a suite solution that has end-to-end isn't a better fit for some organizations, because there certainly is that consideration and some value to those. But for the clients that we specifically work with and that we gravitate towards and that gravitate towards us, there's no question that there's greater adoption and more value to be extracted and deeper relationships that can help any organization evolve through the best in class solution approach.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think just to reiterate, the value of the experience and the relationships, particularly, when in the franchise world, of course, you don't always have full control over your tech stack, right? An independent restaurant brand that doesn't have mandated systems might look at this question a little bit differently or have different considerations. But when you don't have full control over your tech stack, to get the most value and benefit out of being able to integrate solutions, working with partners who've been through that journey and understand how these brand mandated systems work and what needs to happen is extremely beneficial.
Agreed. And speaking a bit about ourselves, I mean, between the two organizations here, OneDataSource and Tablespoon, I'd be hard pressed. I think anyone would be hard pressed to find any organizations that have done more tech stack builds and implementations in the restaurant industry. We certainly have competitors out there, but given the tenure and the time and the scope and the volume of the customer bases, and we've just seen quite a bit that informs how we execute. and how we can help provide quality consulting to our clients.
Right, because it's not as simple as just flipping a switch and setting up a piece of software and turning it on.
Correct. In fact, in the absence of if I was if I try and put myself in the franchisee's shoes, if I'm making this significant decision to make changes to my tech stack, in the absence of a gaping gap, like a really significant gap in features and functions, I'm going to look to the resumes of the partners behind those software solutions and prioritize those. I'm going to look into their ownership structure. That more than anything is going to inform what their service culture is like. I'm going to look for tenured people in their org charts, employee ownership, all those types of things. Yeah, it's really is about the service behind the tech, because there's a lot of really good tech out there, and it's about the people leading the implementations and managing the trainings and dealing with the change management that goes on day in, day out.
Right. Michael, let's go to the next slide and start to dig into some of the other areas that drive value here. So we've talked a little bit about the difference in approach with an all-in-one suite or an end-to-end solution. But let's dig into a little bit about what we mean by best in class. We've got some concepts up here on this slide that speak to what those value drivers are. We'll just take a few minutes to chat through these. The first being specialization. So this is really important because having the ability to plug in specific software or functionality that is specialized can mean the difference between actually getting the results that you're looking for, or kind of a half-baked or halfway solution that doesn't actually really work as well as intended. And we see this all the time because, of course, Sage Intacct is not a restaurant specialized software, but it is a accounting financial management specialized system that is very, very focused on driving value and efficiencies and automations for the teams that are doing that work. And so it's very, very good in that, and strong in that area and in driving other reporting. And then Tucker, from your perspective in the back office space, obviously OneDataSource, very, very deeply specialized. And you're able to drive a lot of value through that specialization.
Correct. And that going back to our previous comments about domain expertise, right? We have embedded in our team, and this is what the developers, the report writers, the trainers, and even our sales teams, really a long tenure in the restaurant space. But we draw there's a line of demarcation when you hand off to the financial reporting, the accounting, and the HR systems. We really view our lane as understanding what operators need, the kind of information, the data they need, the context in which it can be integrated, so that they get what they need to empower the people down their org chart. And then
Right.
When they do have ideas, they can come to us, and when they're speaking to us, they're speaking to people that understand what it's like running the stores. They've been on that side of the equation. We really focus ourselves on understanding and improving and empowering the operators. And then the other side of our equation is to facilitate, be there on an ongoing basis for the accounting and payroll teams, is just to say, look, here's the best we can do today. Here's our lines of communication, and let's always be working toward process improvement. When new technologies or opportunities come up, we're ready to innovate and develop around them.
Right. And that innovation and that flexibility is really key. For example, when third-party delivery became widely adopted and particularly, mandated, right, in some of the brands that we work a lot with, how did OneDataSource adapt and, respond to that challenge?
Yeah. So talking about ongoing process improvement, that's probably the subject that we could expand on that the most.
We could have
right?
a whole other conversation about that. I know.
So like we're talking about pandemic reactions here, right?
Right.
The pandemic hit right at the end of the first quarter in 2020. I think by the end of the second quarter, a lot of brands were seeing, year over year sales for that June actually an uptick, and a lot of that was driven by third-party delivery. So here's a blessing for the industry in that third-party delivery is enabling revenues to stay strong. There's always a price for that, right? And then on the back end, it came with a tremendous amount of reconciliation and challenges because the systems were deployed not native within the point of sale, and the nature of the third party delivery service providers. There's not just sort of this straight through flow of data and transparency, and so it has been like a best effort process for quite some time that keeps getting better. It's first and foremost having the communication, the feedback loop with the operators and the accountants at the franchisee level, and just continuously solving based on what is available from a data standpoint to make the process better. And it's certainly better now than it was in 2021 and 2022. But there's obvious room for improvement. And the role we can play is we can help make the reconciliations less painful. We can help make the exception reporting and the identifying of issues more efficient. And then we can provide the information that the franchisees and the brands themselves need to go back to the third party delivery providers and say, this is where this can improve.
Yeah, and I think that's just a fantastic example of the value that a best in breed approach drives, right? Because we're talking about innovation, how you have the ability through relationships and deep knowledge of the brand, both the brands and the operators, of what's important, being able to innovate products and solutions to best meet those needs with the flexibility of not having to, you're focused on how we can, through integrations and better data connectivity, actually create improvements to accounting workflows and finance workflows, improvements for operators, not breaking things that are designed or architected to be all inside of one system. So that that ability, the flexibility, the agility is really one of the big benefits of this approach. There's another question that comes up a lot around what does an integrated solution actually mean? And I think something that we hear in talking with prospects is, well, we've tried this approach, there was this integration and it didn't work, right? So there's this perception sometimes that when we say something's integrated, it's not as good or as strong as something that's end to end or purpose built. And I think this touches on another key consideration, which is it's absolutely true that all integrations are not created equally. And so when we're looking at, to go back to something you said a moment ago, Tucker, about evaluating who the partners are, and who are you actually working with to drive these solutions, partners that have pre-built and pre-developed integrations are always going to be stronger than two different systems that are not as closely aligned, right? That just need to be able to send data from point A to point B. That's helpful, but this term interoperability really refers to systems, separate systems that are designed intentionally to work closely together, right? And that is a really good example of the value of best in breed, because, for example, with OnePay, there's really strong AP automation capability that can help save huge time for operators, for accountants. And through the design of the integration between OnePay and Sage Intacct, all of that data is automated, right? And you get the visibility of being able to drill down into invoices. And this is something that, as a franchisee, you don't have to solve. It's already been solved, and it just needs to be deployed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was able to be designed that way because of the relationship that we have developed between our organizations, right?
Right.
And I think that you can tie this into the concept of knowing who you're working with, and I mentioned this earlier, their ownership structure and what they're about. There's a much wider long-term horizon when working with organizations like OneDataSource and with Tablespoon. We're not influenced by the burden of the venture capital money that's behind the organization that requires organizations to behave in a certain way, driving top line revenue. We're really, obviously we're focused on that, but it's the long-term nature of the relationships. And so putting projects on hold or addressing a need like the third-party delivery or addressing the need for the interoperability, it's all tied to a service culture. That the employees on both sides of our partnership recognize, and we're incentivized by the long-term relationship that it requires, and that our customers recognize that we have this. And so I stress it. I think it's super important for any franchisee when they're talking about implementing any software, that they need to understand that about the partners that they're selecting. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely agree. Michael, let's flip to the next slide and we'll just talk for just very briefly about, what does this really mean in practice when we talk about seamless integrations? Sage Intacct, here is at the core. This is the accounting financial management system. This is the source of truth for all of your financial information, your general ledger and all of that. And from this foundation, leveraging this modern technology that's in the cloud with these pre-developed seamless integrations with partners that have demonstrated solutions across all different areas of the business. There's supporting operations, tying operations and accounting together through OneDataSource. There's how do you pay your people and payroll through Reliant or ADP or others. There's managing other areas of critical business areas, more on the accounting side as far as complying with the new lease accounting standards that are in place now, budgeting and forecasting, being able to have very efficient and agile ability to plan the direction of the business. So these are things that with this best in breed approach, you're able to deploy the best solutions that can help drive the business forward. And then on our next slide here, just a couple of quick, examples of the value that this integrated best-in-breed approach can drive. And these are all groups that Tablespoon and OneDataSource have worked with to some capacity. So there's some themes here, right? Being able to close the books faster. So how are we able to do that? Well, day-to-day accounting work becomes more efficient, takes less time. So it doesn't take as much at the end of the month or the end of the period to get the books closed. That then enables information to get out to the field a lot faster. And we have worked with clients who have fantastic leadership in their organizations, really championing how accounting and finance can best serve operations, right? Through getting numbers out fast, through giving actionable information, right? It's so important. And then all of these efficiencies drive cost savings. So it's bringing the cost of accounting down at the end of the day. So while there is an investment in the tech stack to be able to get to this, at the end of the day, the value that's being driven is better information, actionable information, faster information at a lower overall cost.
And when you can do that, you're driving decision making from an ops standpoint down the org chart and out into the field. And that it's almost like compound interest, right? When you're talking about a large multi-brand organization, when you've got the trust in data, the nimbleness that you just described, and you're putting it in the hands of your people out there to make decisions, all those little bitty efficiencies day in, day out add up to better store performance, better compliance, and better profitability. It's just, and you end up having organizations that can do more, they're leaner, and they're, when the people down the org chart are empowered to make decisions because the data's there, they're going to have a better work experience.
Right.
These things show up, and it's hard to talk about those things and monitor and put a dollar value on them in a sales presentation. Those are things that you can get to as a franchisee when you're talking to references, and those are the kind of questions that I think franchisees are well served to try and explore when talking to references of the best in class solution providers. Like let's hear about how what's the temperature like on the ops team, what's the morale like, how empowered are they, those kinds of things. It's a cool outcome that we can get to. All right. I want to provide, so here we can provide a little bit more context for everybody on our specific role in the tech stack that Andy just showed sort of a bigger picture of. This is now focusing down in on where we fit. So on that left side, those are a list of the types of vendors and data sources that are very commonly included in the data warehouse that we build in with our application OneView. Across every brand, you might run into a handful. There's going to be a handful of vendors in each of these categories that are a potential source of data that we need to consume so that we can report against it for all departments, and then we can facilitate the flow of that data to Sage Intacct and to the other critical systems and applications that are needed for executing day in, day out. Everything's predicated on the point of sale in the back of house, so we can get the in-store performance and all of the key indices from those systems. But you take it further, you integrate with the client's banks, with their credit card processors, and then the voice of the customer, the speed of service, food service providers should be on here, the various wage on demand and tip to card providers. So there's these categories of vendors within the restaurant ecosystem. We need to consume that data, and then we're pushing that back out to both to the vendors, to the operators, to the accountants that need to, and the HR specialists that need to support everybody, and we're pushing it into the systems. So that's really what OneView is about: is building the warehouse. We look at everything through two lenses. Does this data add context, meaningful context to reporting that will enable and empower better decision making, or does this data help us fully automate, or improve a business process? So that a lot of times that the questions about the use of that data will be driven to us by our clients, and a lot of times it's our own work understanding the industry and the trends that drives that development, right? But we're passing off that data then in the form of reporting above store leadership, and can also be handed down throughout the org chart. But then we're also handing that data off to the accounting and payroll systems. On the other side of the house, Andy alluded to OnePay. That's our accounts payable automation, and it is full end-to-end from invoice collection. We parse all the relevant data off of the invoices. Our business rules engine then maps and codes the invoices appropriately, and is providing that information to the people that need to do the analysis, to the people that need to do the approvals in a way that drives efficiency. And then that information, as we alluded to on the last slide, the faster, the cleaner that information moves through an organization, the better positioned people are to make decisions based on that data. Really, and then with OnePay, we again adding in even greater efficiencies and greater visibility and greater control. Now we can automate the payments process as well. There's financial efficiencies across the board to be realized. This is actually the way a tech stack should be fed. We're the facilitators on the front end to feed the tech stack so that everything that Andy alluded to that Tablespoon and Sage can enable can be done efficiently. Next slide. All right. The makings of a great technology partner. This is personal to me in that I wouldn't want to work in an environment that doesn't have these qualities. I found them in an organization like OneDataSource, the way that Bruce has built his team, structured his team, and the type of commitment to, this is really a long-term, wide horizon approach. We do this work because we like it and we enjoy working with each other. So, we want to be involved in the consultative approach. We're not selling features and functions. We're selling relationships. We're building relationships. That requires that we be service oriented. Andy, I know you can speak directly because you've built your own org chart.
Yeah, and that philosophy is very much at the heart of what we do at Tablespoon as well. And one of the many reasons why OneDataSource, Tucker, Bruce, and the team have been such great partners is that very similar philosophy. Very, very passionate about our clients their success, over the long term. It's not just, getting the sale and moving on to the next group. It's, we're focused on building for long-term success. And that very personalized approach with the experience and the deep experience in the restaurant industry is a lot of what enables that. And from our perspective, as a partner with Sage, as a reseller of Sage software, Sage Intacct software specifically, we recognize that groups can buy Sage Intacct from a lot of different places, including from Sage directly. There are a lot of other reseller partners that are out there, but who you choose to partner with in any technology implementation goes a long way towards the success of that solution over time. And that is absolutely our core focus and passion, is driving that success, not just initially in terms of the initial implementation, but ongoing. Some of those benefits that we talked about a moment ago that our clients have seen, this is phases. This is not just day one. It's building upon a strong foundation of success, then iterating and getting better and better, and we're with our clients every step of the way.
And here's another place for me to talk about, when your franchisees evaluating, their options for these solutions, where ownership structure really matters, right? And this is not, I'm not talking about this as an indictment or criticism of people. I think by and large, across the board, most people we interact with, want to be helpful, right? It's a sort of a default mode. If you're working in and you've got a customer service position, you want to be helpful to your clients. But the challenge is where there becomes conflicts around incentives and how behavior is incentivized within the organizations, and the ability to make decisions, right? And so when you're dealing with organizations that have an employee ownership incentive, or that you see tenure and you see the vested interest, how decisions get made, the values get weighed a little bit differently, and that's ultimately, I think, much better for the customer. All right. Well, so we'll shift to the Q&A part, or any questions we can answer at this point. You can put them in the chat. All right, we'll get going. All right, here we go. We got one. Andy, if you're leveraging multiple systems, what are the primary ways that franchisees can extract maximum value? Or maybe phrase, I'm going to add a little or ways that you see franchisees or their teams falling short of extracting maximum value.
That's a great question, and I'm gonna probably talk a little more about the second part of that question, because we've talked a lot about the different ways that the value gets created here. And I think where I see groups falling short is it usually comes down to one of a couple of things. One is, while the cost of a solution is always very important, there is times can be a tendency to look at the price of software in sort of a vacuum, right? Because we talked about this a little bit before, where the model shifts in terms of what the cost of that tech stack or IT and back office structure looks like. And you see this across other areas in your company, where you're spending more on technology in general. That is clearly the trend. But I think when there is a tendency to look at this system costs X and evaluate that without the rest of the context of the value that's being created. And we do see that, and unfortunately what that can mean is that the investments aren't being made necessarily in the best way. The money's still getting spent, and in many cases you're spending more, but it's not in the best way. So that is one area we do see groups fall short. And then I think the other is really in the diligence, and again, we've talked about this today, of just really understanding who you're working with, who you're buying from, what their capabilities are, not just making sure that that's a well-informed decision, and that you're working with partners who can actually drive the solutions and deliver the outcomes that that you're needing.
Yeah, agree. I think maybe what I might add to that as well, this, the commitment to adoption by the people that are executing the various tasks, down the org chart. it's a real fine balance, right? In the evaluation process, where you absolutely need to get buy-in from the stakeholders. But then, once decisions are made, top down, leadership on the franchisee level really needs to put strong directives and be involved in making sure that their team is committed to seeing the implementation through. Some failures I've seen in my career is when, conceptually everything, all the boxes are checked and decisions are made to move forward, and they're made, at a leadership level appropriately, but without the right amount of buy-in from the team, the implementation suffers because either they don't understand, they feel threatened by the implementation, the change, they're threatened by the change, or they just don't understand what the big picture is because they weren't involved in the discussions. There is some nuance there, though, because it can really, the process can become inefficient from an evaluation standpoint. But finding the right buy-in and leadership staying involved and leading the implementation, the change management piece is huge.
I agree.
Let's see. Sticking with implementation, Andy, and integration, can you talk a little bit about how your team, what your approach is to easing the burden on clients?
Sure. So it all starts with our experience and our deep knowledge and understanding of this industry, and specifically the way that restaurant accounting needs to work, some of the challenges in terms of making sure that operations and accounting are in sync, right? So from an implementation perspective, our clients don't need to teach us their business necessarily. We just need to learn from them what is unique and what they're driving towards, their key goals, priorities, so we can make sure that those are supported. So it's a very hands-on approach during implementation. There's I think a fear, justified, I might add, from folks that have been involved in a lot of tech implementations. Invariably, you've come across one or more that haven't worked. So we really place a big emphasis on communication, taking the burden of time and stress off of our clients' plate, because we ultimately have done this many times. We know what it takes to be successful, and we can lay that path out, right? So being able to, to help with that change management, knowing where we're trying to steer the boat at the end of the day, and then leveraging our partners throughout that implementation to be coordinated, right? So that, we're really quarterbacking and working with, our folks on a client side, our partners, to really drive that communication and make sure that that's smooth. Now with integrations, again, I think it's leveraging those pre-built, pre-developed integrations as much as possible. So, there's no reason, if OneDataSource in OneView has got all of the sales data, and there's a seamless integration with Sage Intacct, we don't need to go solve that again or through custom development effort. There's a solution that exists for that example of that workflow, and so we're going to leverage that because it saves time and it's more effective at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would echo all that. I mean, on the implementation standpoint, our strategy is, we work in small groups based on job role, right? And the idea is that, as quickly as we can, we've got to demonstrate that domain expertise and earn the confidence and the trust of the groups that we're training, that we understand and can relate to what they go through. But at the same time, we want to demonstrate to them that we've seen a lot of environments. We've got a lot of experience and lessons learned from successes and failures that we can share with them. And so it's opening up that ongoing communication, keep the feedback loop always open. The better we are, the more successful we are at doing that early in the relationship with the training, the more value the client will get out of it. And really the same thing goes with the integrations, right? We're building a data warehouse that's touching almost everything in our client's, vendor ecosystem. So we it's all about building that same level of confidence and building relationships with the vendors. And that's also how we identify the ones that we really want to partner with, right? Because you can see how and what their service cultures are like through those integrations, through the work that's done there, and then we really gravitate toward the groups that we really align with from a service culture standpoint. So, all right, well, we're getting toward the end of the time, and our question queue has been satisfied. Andy, I always enjoy our visits, and I'm really grateful for the good work that your team has always done. It starts with the first implementation, and you guys have handled. We get incredible feedback from our clients every time we connect them with you and your team. So thank you for all that.
Well, and likewise, I really appreciate our partnership, and similarly the same service culture. When we're working on implementations together and being able to really drive that transformation for our clients, your team is always amazing to work with, and very, it's so refreshing to work with partners that are, we have this sense of alignment, and really the same, focus on our clients and their success. So, thank you as well, and thank you for the opportunity to join today.
You're welcome. So we'll see you again soon. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.